This week we get to pick back up. We're dropping off of the Passover, and we're picking up with the family of Yah again. Now, I've told y'all before that I keep this stuff bouncing around in my head all week. And I filter it how I think it's going to go. And sometimes, oftentimes, it gets shuffled around just a little bit. I got my mind blown this morning. And I was telling Terry, as this went together, I didn't expect some of the things that were tied to this. I wasn't thinking about them. Even though I was going along this line, he opens this up and he puts this together. So this week we get back to the series on Yah's family. We last saw the mixed multitude at the base of the mountain, scared because of Yah's presence. Let's try the other advance. There we go. As we get back into this, we're going to focus on the my people again, okay? Because that's one of the main things I'm trying to sort out here. There's two divisions of people all through the scripture. There's Yah's people, and there's those that are not Yah's people, okay? And this week, I'm going to give you a broad picture of the opposition to my people, okay? Okay? There were still wheat and tares. We talked about this briefly, but we're going to go into it a little bit deeper today. There's going to be more reading than normal, but it's necessary to paint this picture, okay? Because this picture will stay with you forever. All right, in Exodus 20:18, it says, "Now all the people witnessed the thunderings and the lightning flashes, the sound of the trumpet, and the mountain smoking. And when the people saw it, they trembled and they stood afar off. Then they said to Moses, 'You speak to us, and we will hear. But let not Elohim speak to us, lest we die.'" So they were pretty shaken up by his presence. Now Yah continues to talk to Moses in Exodus 20, verse 22, and he speaks of an altar. Okay? In verse 22 it says, now this is you go through the 10 commandments, now you're getting down to verse 22. Then Yah says to Moses, "Thus you shall say to the children of Israel." To who?
Children of Israel.
Okay, who does this apply to?
Everybody.
The children of Israel, right? All right. "You have seen that I have talked to you from heaven." Then he says in verse 23, "You shall not make," and in parentheses it says, "anything to be with me, gods of silver or gods of gold, you shall not make for yourselves." That's what he said up in the first commandment, right? All right, and then he said, "No graven images," right? "An altar of earth you shall make for me, and you shall sacrifice on it your burnt offerings and your peace offerings, your sheep and your oxen. In every place where I record my name, I will come to you, and I will bless you." Now, I brought this up because, number one, they've just been delivered from Egypt. They've made it through over to Sinai. They know that he's there, and they hear him. And at the base of the mountain, they're sitting there trembling, and he's reminding them that he's looking for sacrifices. And we don't read it and understand it right yet in this part of the story, but as we get to Leviticus, we find out that the peace offering and the burnt offering are not even sin offerings. Okay? And we know he's expected offerings since Cain and Abel, have we not? Okay? So that's something that he continues to bring out. Now, why do I bring it out? Because we've said many times over the past couple of weeks, Revelation 13, I think 13:8 tells us that the Lamb was slain from the foundation of the earth. The sacrifice was thought in Yah's head from the foundation of the earth. It's still all one plan. That's something that I'm trying to continue to paint the picture of. He's not changing his mind. He's not changing his plan. He's not sitting up there watching in a reactive mode thinking, oh man, if they do this, what am I going to do? He already knows what's going to happen. Verse 25. And if you make me an altar of stone, you shall not build it of hewn stone. For if you use a tool on it, you have profaned it. Because if you use it, yes.
So he wanted it all natural. Like don't put no tools on it.
Here's how
just build it.
Lay in place what I made.
Okay.
Don't make anything man-made. If you put a tool to it, it's man-made. Okay? Nor shall you go up by the steps of my altar, that your nakedness may not be exposed on it. All right, so I want you to recall with me the first time that Moses met Yah at the burning bush. Turn to Exodus 3, verse 14. Exodus 3, verse 14. Because remember, I told you, Moses wrote Genesis, and the first 11 chapters, well, actually more than that, and the first part of Exodus, without even being there. He didn't know about that. He had no first-hand experience of what happened in Genesis, nor what happened in the beginning of Exodus, coming up to his story, actually, other than what his family was able to tell him. In Exodus 3:14, Elohim says to Moses, I am who I am. And he said, thus you shall say to the children of Israel. Here we go again, right? He's separating the children of Israel. I am has sent me to you. Moses was sent by I am to the children of Israel. Verse 16. Go and gather the elders of Israel together and say to them, Yahweh Elohim of your fathers, the Elohim of Abraham, of Isaac, and of Jacob, appeared to me, saying, I have surely visited you and seen what is done to you in Egypt. Visited again. We talked about that over the past couple of months. It means he's getting ready to deliver them. Ruth knew that she could go back from Moab into Israel because she heard Yah had visited his people and gave them bread. Okay? That visited is a link there. In verse 17, and I have said, I will bring you up out of affliction. Remember when he said that? He told that to Abraham. In Genesis, I think it was 15. Your descendants are going to suffer in a land that's not theirs. I will bring you up out of the affliction of Egypt to the land of the Canaanites, of the Hittites, of the Amorites, and the Perizzites, and the Hivites, and all them otherites, Jebusites, to a land flowing with milk and honey. Now, he did tell Abram he was going to bring him up out of there. Okay? Now, this land flowing with milk and honey. If the land is already flowing with milk and honey when you get there, you didn't do nothing. Mm-hmm. It was already prepared for you before you got there. Kind of like the garden was before Adam and Eve got there, right? Mm-hmm. Kind of like the kingdom is being prepared for us now, right? Mm-hmm. Okay? It will be flowing with milk and honey because somebody prepared it for us. All right? So we know that Yah did the preparing, but he used the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites to do it. In verse 18. Then they, the leaders of Israel, will heed your voice, and you shall come, you and the elders of Israel, to the king of Egypt. And you shall say to him, Yahweh Elohim of the Hebrews has met with us. And now, please let us go 3 days' journey into the wilderness that we may sacrifice to Yahweh our Elohim. Okay? He's asking the king of Egypt. Now, I told you, Egypt is a type or a picture of the world. The king of Egypt is a type or picture of the prince of the world. Who's the prince of the world right now? That's right. Hasatan. Verse 19. But I am sure that the king of Egypt will not let you go. Not even, now this is this is Elohim talking. If he's sure, it's going down like he said it is, right?
Yeah.
The king of Egypt will not let you go, no, not even with a mighty hand. Wait. They let him go. Wait.
It wasn't time.
Let's look into this. Now remember, this is when Moses first meets. Do you remember that burning bush that knew Moses' name?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's when this is going on, okay? The enemy must be destroyed. The strong arm is only part of it. And it doesn't establish the complete release. Verse 20. So I will stretch out my hand and strike Egypt with all my wonders, which I will do in its midst, and after that they will let you go. And I will give this people favor in the sight of the Egyptians, and it shall be, when they go, they shall not go empty-handed. But, in verse 22, but every woman shall ask of her neighbor, namely, of her who dwells near her house, articles of silver, articles of gold, and clothing, and she shall put them on your sons and daughters, and so you shall plunder the Egyptians. Now, they did let him go. He did give them favor in the sight of the Egyptians, right? But this verse brings up a couple of questions for me. You get the impression, because the land of Goshen was protected, and things didn't happen in Goshen that happened in the rest of Egypt, right? And all of that. But it says right here, of her who dwells near her house. So did we have Egyptians living in Goshen? Or did we have Israelites living in the other part of Egypt? Or did we have both?
Both.
Probably both, right? So they're all bailing out of Egypt together, and the mixed multitude becomes a little bit clearer, doesn't it? Some are there because they believed and sacrificed and put the blood on the doors. Others may be just tagging along because, well, Yah done wiped Egypt out.
They kind of all got lumped.
There's not much going on here, right? All right, jump over to Exodus 5, verse 1. And again, afterwards Moses and Aaron went and told Pharaoh, thus says Yahweh Elohim of Israel, let my people go. I'm just touching base on that again. Let my people go, that they may hold a feast to me in the wilderness. And Pharaoh said, who is Yah, that I should obey his voice and let Israel go? I do not know Yah, and I will not let Israel go. Clear, Israel is his people. Verse 3. So they said, the Elohim of the Hebrews has met with us. Please let us go 3 days' journey into the desert and sacrifice to Yahweh our Elohim, lest he fall upon us with pestilence or with sword. Then after the plague of the flies, Pharaoh calls on Moses and Aaron, right? In Exodus 8, 25 through 28, Pharaoh called Moses and Aaron and said, go sacrifice to Elohim in your land. Go sacrifice to Elohim in the land. And Moses said, it is not right to do so, for we would be sacrificing the abomination of the Egyptians to Yahweh our Elohim. If we sacrifice the abomination of the Egyptians before their eyes, will they not stone us? We will go 3 days' journey into the wilderness and sacrifice to Yahweh Elohim as he will command us. So Pharaoh said, I will let you go, that you may sacrifice to Yahweh your Elohim in the wilderness, only you shall not go very far away. And by the way, intercede for me. The king of Egypt, who continually thinks he's greater than God, is asking God's people to intercede for him because he ain't able to hang. So, all right. Notice that the king of Egypt is willing to let the Hebrews, the children of Israel, Yah's people, he's willing to let them worship through sacrifice. However, they had to do it within his parameters. Go sacrifice in the land. Okay, you can go in the wilderness, but don't go very far. Remember, he said, oh, you can go, but you're not taking the women and children. They kept setting parameters for Yah's people to do what Yah says to do. In today's vernacular, from a not-so-distant past, it might sound like this. You can gather together to worship, but you can't have a crowd of more than 5 people. That was a case in San Diego for a home study, not 10 years ago. That's a real live thing. You can gather together, but you got to wear a mask. You can gather together, but you can't denounce homosexuality. You can gather together, but fill in the blank. Do you know why it sounds the same today as it did back when they were doing it? It's just different words. Because it's the same enemy. It's the same opposition. We face the same opposition. The prince of this world is still trying to command how, where, and when we worship Yah. Realistically, the prince of this world has buy-in already by the vast majority of people in this world. But we know that too because Yah says he will always have a remnant. A remnant is much smaller than the majority, isn't it?
Yeah.
He's always going to have a remnant.
Little piece.
Yes. All right. We're looking at Yah's family, but I want to take some time to point out the enemy of Yah's family. So, we mentioned earlier Exodus 3:19. I'm going to go back there for a springboard for a second, okay? But I am sure that the king of Egypt will not let you go, no, not even by a mighty hand. And I told you, the enemy must be destroyed. We know he did 10 plagues. He killed the firstborn. And then Pharaoh let him go. But it didn't last long, did it? Okay? Now, if this is the first Exodus, and we know there's a greater Exodus coming, is it going to look similar to this? I'm shaking my head yes, because I believe it's going to. Okay? There may seem to be a temporary deliverance. But he's not done yet. Why? This is the tough part for some people to understand. Because the prince of this world is doing exactly what he was created to do. Okay? He's doing exactly what he was created to do. God told Moses that Pharaoh wouldn't release or let the people go even with a strong arm. He told him that at the burning bush. That's what 319 is. The plagues were the strong arm. However, the Red Sea was necessary to totally destroy the enemy and remove the threat from the people. Remember, the people were trapped in that canyon up against the sea. The Egyptian army could have wiped them out had it not been for Yah's intervention. That would have been the end of Yah's people. And the prince of this world probably thought, aha! How many times has the prince of this world, through whoever the leader is at the time, tried to kill the Jews, males, the males of the Hebrews? Because he knows that's the line of the Messiah, the one that's going to save. All right, we see something at the end of the book, similar at the end of the book, don't we? Yeshua draws the lost sheep together. He binds the two sticks together. He binds the enemy up for 1,000 years. He rules and reigns with an iron rod. Right? He's ruling and reigning with an iron rod. The strong arm is being dealt out. Yet, Hasatan gets released. And guess what? He's got an army in no time. Just like Egypt. Right? And then the fate that fell upon Egypt is going to fall upon Hasatan and the army at that time. You understand? He's saying things the same way with different words all the way through Scripture. He's telling the same story with different pictures and different scenarios. Okay? Question. If the kingdom of God is peaceful and there's no tears and all this good stuff we read about, why does Yeshua have to rule with an iron rod?
If there's still people outside the kingdom.
A grounding effect?
Was that?
A grounding effect?
No,
When
it's...
when you go and he's ruling with an iron rod, usually you put that for, if the lightning strikes it, it grounds the
Well,
electricity.
yeah, I see what you're saying. Yes, ma'am.
There's still people outside the kingdom.
That's what I want you to understand.
Also, it would power the other dwelling.
The king...
The term the iron rod, rather than saying an iron fist. See, with like an iron fist, you collect the energy. With an iron rod, you set it.
Well, he's going to use the rod as a rod that strikes and shatters pottery and all of that stuff. Okay, that's the way that's going to work. So, but I want you to understand, the kingdom proper is the land that he's promised. Okay? Outside of that land that he's promised, there's going to be all kinds of people out there. And some of them are going to be needed to be ruled with an iron fist or an iron rod. Okay?
Have you seen Sweet Home Alabama?
I have not, but I heard the song.
There's a thing where he's going out to the beach and everything else during a lightning storm. And then when the lightning strikes one of the rods that he has in the ground and everything else, it breaks a globule because, sand,
Right.
silica, makes glass. So, I
Yeah.
was wondering.
Yeah. However, the serpent's released, the strong arm period, and then after the strong arm period, he's released, and then he's removed forever. Okay? Now, I want you to, this is going to be a review for some of us, and there's going to be quite a bit of reading between now and the end. I want you to turn to Job chapter 1. And there's a lot of people that have wondered why Job. What is the purpose of Job? What is it teaching us? What is it telling us? Okay? So, Job chapter 1. And the things that I'm going to point out some things as I continue to read through here. Okay? Yeah, why don't you read through verse 5.
Okay. In the land of Uz, there lived a man whose name was Job. This man was blameless and upright. He feared God and shunned evil. He had 7 sons and 3 daughters, and he owned 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 yoke of oxen, and 500 donkeys, and had a large number of servants. He was the greatest man among all the people of the East. His sons used to hold feasts in their homes and on their birthdays, and they would invite their 3 sisters to eat and drink with them. When a period of feasting had run its course, Job would make arrangements for them to be purified. Early in the morning, he would sacrifice a burnt offering for each of them, thinking, perhaps my children have sinned and cursed God in their hearts. This was Job's regular custom.
Okay, so Job is into sacrificing, and he's talking about a burnt offering. Remember, a burnt offering isn't for sin, but he's attributing maybe his children have gone awry in this testing. He is a very, very wealthy man. He has been blessed beyond recognition, as we can tell. All right, so picking it up in verse 16. Now there was a day when the sons of Elohim came to present themselves before Yah, and Satan, Hasatan, also came among them. Now I want you to pay attention to verse 7. Yah said to Satan, does anybody have anything different than that? Who started the conversation?
God.
Pay attention to that. Have you considered my servant Job? For there is no one like him on the earth, a blameless and upright man, fearing Elohim and turning away from evil. And then Satan answered Yah, does Job fear God? Now I want you to listen to this. He asked the question, have you considered my servant Job? You tell me by this answer whether he never considered Job. Okay? Does Job fear God for nothing? Have you not made a fence around him and his house and all that he has on every side? You have blessed the work of his hands, and his possessions have increased in the land. But reach out your hand now and touch all that he has. He will certainly curse you to your face. Now, if you read between the lines, he's saying, yes, I've considered him, and I can't get to him. But he said, he tells the Lord, you reach out your hand. Verse 12. Then Yah said to Satan, behold, all that he has is in your power. Only do not reach out and put your hand on him. So Satan departed at the presence of Yah. Now, where it says, behold, all that he has is in your power. That means it wasn't in his power until Yah opened that door. And Hasatan knew that. Because he said, you put a hedge around him. I can't get to him. You see, the enemy's created. He's doing what he's created to do, but he cannot step out of bounds. He couldn't reach out and touch Job unless he was allowed. Verse 13. Now on the day when his sons and daughters were eating and drinking, now listen to this. This next passage. This is what the enemy does when he finally gets the permission. Okay? Has he been considering Job? Look at what happens. Now on the day when his sons and daughters were eating and drinking wine in their oldest brother's house, a messenger came to Job and said, the oxen were plowing and the female donkeys feeding beside them, and the Sabaeans attacked and took them. They also killed the servants with the edge of the sword, and I alone have escaped to tell you. Wasn't that nice? Now, first of all, did the Sabaeans think to attack them on their own? No, I think it was. I think there were some heavy hints, right? Okay? Is Yah the only one that has children? No.
No.
No, because the New Testament tells us, in fact, Yeshua tells some of the guy, hey, you are of your father the devil.
Yeah.
Okay? All right. While he was still speaking, another came and said, the fire of Yah fell from heaven and burned up the sheep and the servants and consumed them, and I alone have escaped to tell you. Now, isn't that nice of Hasatan to leave one survivor so that he could go back and talk about the destruction that took place? All right? And while he was still speaking, another came and said, the Chaldeans formed 3 units and made a raid on the camels and took them and killed the servants with the edge of the sword, and I alone have escaped to tell you. And while he was speaking, another came. Your sons and your daughters were eating and drinking wine in the oldest brother's house, and behold, a great wind came from across the wilderness and struck the 4 corners of the house, and it fell on the young people, and they died. And I alone have escaped to tell you. Then Job got up, tore his clothes, and shaved his head. Then he fell on the ground and worshipped. He said, naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I shall return. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of Yah. Despite all this, Job did not sin, nor did he blame Elohim. Now, Job is not privy to this conversation that's going on between Hasatan and the Lord. He doesn't know what's going on. He just knows now, all of a sudden, in one day, he lost everything. But he still praised Yah. Okay? Chapter 2. Again, there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before Yah, and Hasatan came along to present himself. Yah said to Hasatan, who started the conversation again? That's right. Yah said to Hasatan, where have you come from? And Hasatan answered Yah and said, from roaming about on the earth and walking around on it. And Hasatan said to Satan, have you considered my servant Job? I don't know about you guys, but I'm not so sure I want Yah asking Hasatan if he's considered me.
Yeah.
You know. Another thing I want to talk about the first half of this, okay? When Hasatan cut loose and wiped out everything like that, did that come as a surprise to Yah?
No.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Have you considered my servant Job? You know Yah's livid by now. Hasatan is livid right now. For there is none like him on the earth, a blameless and upright man, fearing Elohim and turning away from evil. Same thing he said about him in the first half of this story.
Wrong.
Says the same thing, right? He's still the way I said he was the first time. And he still holds firm in his integrity, although you enticed me against him to ruin him without cause. Now Hasatan answered Yah and said, skin for skin. He's not backing down, is he? Yes, all that the man has, he will give for his life. However, reach out with your hand now and touch his bone and his flesh, and he will curse you to your face. And Yah said to Hasatan, behold, he is in your power, only spare his life. Then Hasatan went out from the presence of Yah and struck Job with severe boils from the sole of his foot to the top of his head. And Job took a piece of pottery and scraped himself, and he was sitting there in the ashes. And then his wife came to him, his helper, his rib, his companion. Do you still hold firm to your integrity? Curse Elohim and die. But he said to her, you are speaking as one of the foolish women speaks. Shall we actually accept good from Elohim but not accept adversity? Despite all this, Job did not sin with his lips. Now, at this point here, I want to introduce you to one of the worst ministries on the face of this planet.
Oh.
This ministry I heard it from somebody else, I don't remember who. But this is the ministry of the friends of Job. Okay? Now, when Job's 3 friends heard about this and all this adversity, they came to him. Each one came from his own place. Eliphaz the Temanite, Bildad the Shuhite, and Zophar the Naamathite. And they all made an appointment together to come and sympathize with him and comfort him. And when they looked from a distance and did not recognize him, they raised their voices and wept. And each of them tore his robe and threw dust over their heads and into the sky. Then they sat down on the ground with him for 7 days and 7 nights, with no one speaking a word, for they saw his pain was very great. Now these guys came to comfort, but they spend the next 36 chapters telling Job what he did wrong.
Yeah.
What did Elohim say he did wrong?
Nothing.
Wow. Wow. Are we part of the Friends of Job ministry at any time? Something to think about, right? We don't want to be. We get caught up. And Hasatan is right. Skin for skin. Peter said, I will never deny you. I will die for you. Until the rubber hit the road, huh? And then he denied him. So Hasatan knows us pretty well. It doesn't take much to squirrel. We're off looking at something and, you know. All right, so now, I read all that to set this up. The conversation was between Yah and Hasatan. Now I want to give you a better picture of who Hasatan really is. All right? And how it relates to us. Okay? Turn to Job chapter 41. In my Bible, that's just before chapter 42.
Right after 40, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Now listen, I am not trying to give Hasatan a lot of credit. But Yah put it in his word for a reason that we should know it. Okay? If we're going to abide in Yeshua, the word, and the word's going to abide in us, we got to look at all the nooks and crannies, don't we? Okay. Now, in chapter 41, Yah's talking to Job after all this back and forth with the 3 friends and all this. They're telling Job all the things he did wrong, and he's telling them I didn't do anything wrong. And Yah is talking to Job now. He's been talking to him for a few chapters, but in chapter 41, he asks Job. Yah does. Can you drag out Leviathan with a fish hook? Now here he's bringing up Leviathan. I want you to equate Leviathan with Hasatan because same. Okay? Can you drag out Leviathan with a fish hook and press down his tongue with a rope? Can you put a rope in his nose and pierce his jaw with a hook? Will he make many pleas to you? Or will he speak to you gentle words? Will he make a covenant with you? Will you take him as a servant forever? Will you play with him as with a bird and tie him down for your young girls? Will the traders bargain for him? Will they divide him among the merchants? Can you fill his skin with harpoons or his head with fishing spears? Lay your hand on him. Go ahead. That's paraphrased. I added the go ahead. Lay your hand on him. Remember the battle. You will not do it again. Behold, your expectation is false. Will you be hurled down even at the sight of him? No one is so reckless that he dares to stir him. Who then is he who opposes me? Okay? Now what that means, what Yah's saying there is Leviathan is a created being. He's created. And if you can't mess with him, what do you think you're doing messing with the Creator? Then I'm going to address this confronting Leviathan a little bit more in just a few minutes. All right. Who has been the first to give to me that I should repay them? Whatever is under the entire heaven is mine. I will not be silent about his limbs, or his mighty strength, or his graceful frame. Who can strip off his outer covering? Who can pierce his double armor? Who can open the doors of his face? Around his teeth there is terror. His strong scales are his pride, locked as with a tight seal. One is so close to another that no air can come between them. They are joined one to another. They clasp each other and cannot be separated. His sneezes flash forth light, and his eyes are like the eye of the dawn. From his mouth go burning torches. Sparks of fire leap forth. From his nostrils smokes go out, and from a boiling pot and burning reeds. His breath sets coals aglow, and his flame goes forth from his mouth. In his neck dwells strength, and dismay leaps before him. The folds of his flesh are joined together, firm and immovable on him. His heart is as firm as stone. Does that surprise anybody? The center of his being is as firm as stone, as firm as a lower millstone. When he rises up, the mighty are afraid. Because of the crashing, they are bewildered. The sword that reaches him cannot prevail, nor the spear, the dart, or the javelin. He regards iron as straw, bronze as rotten wood. The arrow cannot make him flee. Sling stones are turned from stubble for him. Clubs are regarded as stubble. He laughs at the rattling of the javelin. His underparts are like sharp pieces of pottery. He spreads out like a threshing sledge on the mud. He makes the depths boil like a pot. He makes the sea like a jar of ointment. Behind him, he illuminates a pathway. One would think the deep to be gray-haired. Nothing on this earth is like him. One made without fear. He looks on everything high. He is king over all the sons of pride. Does that not describe Hasatan? Okay. Now I want you to think about me think about me. I don't want you to think about me. I want you to think with me. Think with me. When Yeshua was in the wilderness, and he was face to face with Hasatan, he said, "It is written. It is written. It is written." He relied on what Yah said. It is written. Okay? And then we read, I want to say it's Matthew's account, but I'm not positive. After the third time Yeshua said it is written, we're told that Hasatan left for a more opportune time. He didn't club him then. Yeshua didn't stop him then. The end stop doesn't happen till the 1,000-year reign is over. Then he's separated from us. Now the point of what I brought up today is to just clearly put the two sides together. We have Yah's people, and Hasatan's got some children. And in the middle, that mixed multitude is everybody. We are among wheat. We are among tares. We don't know who's who. The only way that we could discover who's who is by doing what Yah created us to do. Once we do that, we bear fruit. That fruit draws others to us, actually to the Word, and that's how we know. None of the disciples thought Paul was one of them in the beginning. None of them. They were running from him. But Yah had a mission for him. So we can't tell one way or the other. But remember, as Peter and Yeshua were walking across the beach, and Peter was wondering about John, well, what about him back there? And Yeshua said, don't worry about him. You follow me. You follow me. Do what I called you to do. You're going to bear much fruit. When you bear much fruit, you're going to glorify me and you're going to glorify my Father. And He's going to glorify you. That's how it works. He didn't give us the ability to pick and choose. And, we don't have x-ray vision and say, oh, that one's going to be a believer. But I got to go start sharing. And, He wants us to do what He created us to do. And He didn't create us all to do the same thing. Trust me. Y'all's goats are in trouble if I'm in charge. They are in trouble. I'm liable to be over here just measuring against cast iron skillets. But the thing, and that would be crazy because Yah made it to be the goats reproduce. If I don't know how to take care of that, but we've got 3 or more in here that know how to do that. There's it's I know Valerie gets a lot of chances to share the word through what she's doing with goats. And I think you have too in the past, when you were raising them for a while. But that's my point. The battle's real. There's our good guy, and there's a bad guy. Don't ever forget the bad guy's created. He cannot do anything without permission. He can't do anything without permission. But once he gets that permission, he will exercise every inch of it. Every inch of it. So, I saw this as a great opportunity with everybody, with a mixed multitude at the base of the mountain. I saw this as a great opportunity to clarify between both sides, and then we're going to go through. It's Yah that chooses who's who. And with what I told you today and what we've said in the past, and you already know all this stuff. It's just that maybe you haven't put it together this way, okay? The reason many are called and not all are called is because not all are open to it. Some of these all are Hasatan's children. Okay? So, having said all that, does anybody have any questions or comments? Did I flow so that everybody was able to follow me?
Yeah.
All right, I didn't want to lose anyone.
Do you think I was out of line with the different opinion with the iron rod?
Yeah,
You know how like the older houses are set?
yeah, I know exactly what you're saying.
And I with electricity, like when there was methane, they use methane for lights and stuff.
I
and
get-
they have a line that's tied to an iron rod that's in the ground, but there's no electricity connected to it. But how would they power the house? How would they have
I get your purpose. I get what you're saying. It's actually true. It's functional, but it's just not in the right context. Okay? We're in a different context over here than you are there. All right? Okay. If I tell you I'm growing weed out back,
What type of weeds would you be growing?
that's exactly my point. The iron rod is in a different context over here where Yeshua's ruling with it. than it is for what you're talking about with grounding in a house.
Well, because there's a thing that, if I remember right, there's an illustration where, because everything's like a test. So when, you know, with this, with your finger, you should be able to go and I can light my septic, and, you know.
Right, but you're in a different context than what I was sharing. Anybody else? Okay, that's all I got, man. I love you guys, and now is the time to
Let our hearts receive the blessing.
thank you.